Welcome to Lean 6 Leadership. That's lean number 6 leadership.com podcast, where I discuss the ins and outs of quality engineering management, program management, and project management, and how it applies to your daily life. I'm a certified Six Sigma Master Black Belt, a recovering project management professional, and I've been in manufacturing in one role or another for the last 20 plus years. In this episode, we're going to talk about maintenance. You don't hear that a lot in these discussions, but it's probably one of the most important. When I was putting this script together, how should I put this? I spend about 3 hours Sunday evening through Thursday in the evening hooked up to a dialysis machine. And while I'm doing that, I endeavor on YouTube and some of it. There's not a whole lot I can do during that time period. If I could operate a computer properly, I would. There's a lot of things I'd like to be doing, but I can't. Because if I'm moving my hand around too much, there's all kinds of issues. But I say that because I was watching, or I listened to a lot of stories on YouTube for different things. And this one is, it was the wife was cheating on her husband, and husband found out. How he wound up finding out was he was part of an organization, a manufacturing organization, and he was one of the repair technicians, one of the senior maintenance techs in the organization, and the wife was the marketing director or like marketing, PR, that kind of thing. And they'd hired a new CEO because the old CEO had passed away. It was a family-run business. And the guy was doing short-term gains. And one of the things he'd done was to stop parts of the maintenance schedule. Yeah, they were getting gains because they weren't doing their shutdowns, their programmed shutdowns, and they were getting more productivity in the short term. But in the story, which surprised me, is they actually reflected it quite accurately, because I've seen it happen, where machinery starts shutting down and whatnot. What had happened is the wife wasn't exactly cheating. She was just so into the new CEO and all this kind of stuff, and she was treating him with disrespect and all this other stuff. So the guy, the husband, decides, okay, I'm out of here. I ain't putting up with this anymore. Because there was also stuff going on at work where the new CEO and his wife weren't treating him well there either. Because he's a lowly maintenance technician. He has no ambition. He's no this, no this, Well, the family realized who he was and what he was. And so when he took off to another company and was making more money and doing the stuff there, the machinery and everything started breaking down at the company he used to work for. Like one older machine was having issues, and they, spent, like 3-4 days shut down trying to fix it, and they started realizing, hey, wait a minute, there's other stuff starting to have issues here because we haven't stick to the maintenance schedule. Now, I tell you this because I was surprised to see it in this story on YouTube, and how it was reflected so accurately. So I'm assuming the author, not exactly a listener of my podcast, but he or she was in manufacturing and maintenance and quality control, because this stuff was very reflective of what can actually happen. So I was really surprised to see that in fiction like that. So I'm starting out maintenance this way because it's one of those surprise issues. You you know you got to do it, but you don't want to, and you don't want to spend the money on it. But if you don't do it in a planned way, well, you're going to have all kinds of unplanned, very bad variables that you just do not want. So, this comes out of the whole Toyota Total Preventive Maintenance program, things like that. And it's, when you think about it, um, we saw a rather interesting example of it in February of 2022. February through June of 2022 was a worldwide example of why maintenance actually matters, and why scheduled maintenance and doing the scheduled maintenance and spending the money on scheduled maintenance is important. Can anybody guess what I'm talking about? Now, I don't have any listeners from that part of the world, at least as far as inside Russia is concerned. I haven't seen anything pop up in Ukraine in a long time. Poland I get once in a while. But Russia, their biggest problem was maintenance. There's a deeper problem. It was all about money management, because they didn't do the maintenance because they were too busy siphoning the cash off from the maintenance and the materials for the maintenance and everything else. So when they did their invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022, their equipment couldn't handle it. It's not that they couldn't beat the Ukrainians, they could have. But when your equipment isn't there and you can't get the fuel and the ammunition there, you have the ammunition, you have the people, you have the equipment, but when they don't move because they're broken, because the tires are too worn out, because they've been sitting, because one side's been sitting in the sun for the last 10 years with no real maintenance to them at all, you can't get the amount of equipment there on time, you're not going to do the job that you want done. You don't get that overwhelming force that gets the job done. Those are just some minor examples that are very obvious why maintenance matters. I mean, World War II. Sorry, Germany, but yeah, you had nice tanks, but you couldn't maintain them. They were too complicated. The American Sherman tank, by any stretch of the imagination, wasn't the greatest tank of the war from a firepower, armor, or maneuver standpoint, but because the Americans can have 5 of them in a platoon rolling across whatever, yeah, 3 of them get taken out by a Panther tank or Panzer IV. Okay. The other 2 went ahead and took the Panther, the Panzer IV, even the Tiger out. Okay. or the airplane came by and took it out while the Shermans held them on. And then here comes the maintenance crews. Those 3 tanks are back in action within 2 days. Oh, wait, here comes a whole bunch more. Because they're easy to make and maintain, and easy to drive, and easy to use. That's what made the Sherman tank the best. Sorry, Russian or Soviets. T-34 is a kind of a fine tank. Kind of. It's kind of easy to use. But it was garbage construction. I'm sorry. Those things popped like never mind. I'm not going to get into all that. I'm not that's not my specialty. Go see go see go see the specialist guys on that. You know, like what's it, Churchill, the UK armor museum about that particular stuff, and look at the specifications. The maintenance was the deal. I mean, look who ended up winning. Okay, and the maintenance is what really is the important thing. Scheduling maintenance, scheduled maintenance. You control your costs because you know when you're going to go down. You can plan everything. You can make sure your equipment is being used to its maximum capability. You're not, you know when you can load everything up at its maximum capacity, utilizing it as best as possible. So understanding some of the stuff we've talked about in previous episodes, you know, the process controls, the process stabilization, and understanding how all that comes together means maintenance is extremely, you know, important, because you're able to make sure that those things are going to be working when you want them to be working, and you can do shutdowns, and you can run your repair people and your maintenance people to make sure that those things are at their best at, you know, maximum utilization in those periods of time when you put the rest of your people on vacation, and they can rest and relax and recover, and then when they come back, your maintenance people can switch out and take, you know, longer vacations and still be able to cover each other. See, it allows for better utilization of personnel as well, where scheduling maintenance is concerned. And you got to make sure everyone is involved in maintenance. Everyone. And I'm talking about from the CEO on down to the receptionist at the front desk and warehouse people, everybody, because everybody's involved in the maintenance. Everybody. And you got to keep them in it. So you get them bought in, you get them understanding why, you get them keeping them in there by letting them know costs and equipment utilization and how it can affect their vacation time. Because, you know, if it's down, or hey, one overtime help us do the maintenance. So you can kind of work both ends of that. And you gotta make sure everyone's involved, because they hear something walking by, hey, that don't sound right. Is there something up with that? Talk to the person that actually works it, and they, you know, get some kind of you know, outside inside review of those things. Now, item 3, if you go by the outline I put as a description of each episode, seems weird for maintenance. Because the first thing I put is customer feedback. What does the customer know about my maintenance? They don't. And as long as they don't know, because they don't see an impact, that means you're doing your job right. If they're having a problem because of delivery schedules or quality issues, because if you're a manufacturer and you're cutting parts and the parts aren't, you know, aren't exactly to spec, you know, they're within tolerances, but they're not close enough to the spec that, you know, they're running close on one end or the other of the tolerances. That's starting to worry the customer. You know, they're worried about other potential failures, you know, further on in the process if it's a subcomponent to something else. Now the engagement, you know, that maintenance, you know, again, this comes down to, you know, make sure you're talking to your customer, because if you're riding the line on one end of your tolerance, and that's fine. And the customer's got an issue with it, and nobody's talked to the customer about it. That's a problem, because that's gonna hurt your maintenance, because, you know, maybe there was a reason for, there's a reason for the tolerance, which is what the machine is capable of, whatnot, or whatever the process is capable of. But if you're riding one end or the other, maybe there was a reason a long time ago where, the center is where you want to be always. Whenever there's a tolerance, the center is where you want to be. It's kind of a, heuristic deal, or rule of thumb, same thing. Um, you know, do the customers need to know? Sometimes not. Because maintenance, they don't need to know you're doing maintenance. They may need to know when you're doing maintenance. Now, why would they need to know when you're doing maintenance? The reason why they would need to know when you're doing maintenance is if they're expecting things to come out, or they want to do a rush order. I'm doing maintenance. Maintenance is a thing. Well, another reason why I'm bringing this up is I'm towards the end of my maintenance stuff in my own little workshop here, and I've been producing. I'm actually doing a lot more R&D right now, but I've been producing some things. Like I got one of my 3D printers, I got my resin printer up and running again. So I'm working on some small projects some personal projects. So I'm punching out a lot of stuff on that. And it's coming along rather nicely. I'll have my Giga Rust tank. Yay! I would say the other word of what it is. It's like this, but there's like trademarks and stuff on that. So it's a very large tank in a very popular science fiction tabletop war game. Bane something or other with a blade or something, something like that. If you know, you know. So the whole thing where maintenance is concerned, especially where total productive maintenance is concerned, I helped develop a program to train Mosaic here in Florida with their TPM program years ago, and I've implemented it in other places. And I've always been a big advocate for it, because I've seen what happens when you don't. Because yeah, you'll get a short-term gain on it, but you're gonna have crashes when you don't want them. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times where a run to failure is kind of what you're gonna have to do. I mean, it's a situational basis. But make sure your customer is fully engaged on that, because as soon as that thing fails and it's going to be down, God forbid, the kind of depends on what kind of manufacturing you're doing, because oh my God, when I was working some of that stuff with fuses for grenades, oh my God, run to failure on those machines was a bad idea, and we tried to avoid that as much as we absolutely possibly could, because the machines we were operating with have been in operation for 25 years, 30 years. I mean, some of that stuff still had the original steel in it from outside the Pittsburgh area. I mean, one was a really nice setup The steel of the base had been, when it was manufactured, was sat in water for a long time to temper it from warping. It was just like, stuff was beautiful. They got to hold up to anything. You could have shot um, 50 cal rounds into it. It would have absorbed it like nothing. Thing was thing was a work of art practically. You know, real real skill, because the owner of the company was a family-owned company. He was buying these things up to prevent them from falling into the hands of other countries. He's fairly fairly patriotic man. A lot of respect for him and his family. Um, his brother, who ran the other company, was was a character too. So I have a lot of respect for that family. But when you're implementing total preventive maintenance, then I was implementing it. A client. I was just consulting. I was consulting at the time and teaching. We were training their entire maintenance crew. We were running them through classes, like month-long classes, at a local community college. We would use motors as kind of a little example of, because they worked on a ton of different motors. So we'd use these DC motors and basically go through like a whole maintenance routine on there and show them how to extrapolate that into other items, like how to develop a check sheet and develop different kinds of review sheets or check sheets on where maintenance was concerned. Like you have operator check sheets. Like this is what you have the operators check. This is the stuff that they're going to see and whatnot, and it's stuff they can actually work on. And then something at 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, 360, etc. And then you have like what they can do, and then what has to be sent to offsite, and have it all broken up. Now, military does that. Believe you me, the American military does that and does it rather well. And it was easy for me to adopt this because that's what the military does. And they do total preventive maintenance, at least on just about everything, vehicles and weapons. Because I was a unit armorer, and when I was in Panama, our supply sergeant had to go up to Atlanta for some training for like a month and a half or something like that. It was a long period of time. And we were having a major inspection happening, and I had to make sure that the arms room was up to spec, and I did. I was turned loose to do everything I needed, and I made sure that all the paperwork was in place, all the weapons were maintained accordingly. Whatever needed to get sent out for higher maintenance, got sent out for higher maintenance. The personally owned weapons for the people living in the barracks were secured appropriately, and they came in and did their personal maintenance as they saw fit, and that my paperwork was matched to what was in there, and the forms were filled out properly to include an individual form for the weapon itself, where I could just pull it up and say, hey, here's the 2404 on the weapon, where it's been serviced, cleaned, reviewed, and in maintenance, and the operator checked off on it. I was in Panama for a unit that didn't use those damn things. I mean, the weapons were in the arms room. I mean, if we needed them, we could, if we had to, because this was like in 94, 96. So this was well after. The only time that we had anything close to a weapons draw was we had one group, mostly Puerto Ricans, Really cool guys. Actually, some of them were friends of mine. I'm still in touch with them on Facebook. And they would be dropped in, and they would do, and they'd sit there and listen in on radio stuff. I mean, with the host country's knowledge, and they would assist the host country with doing these intercepts and whatnot. And well, there was I can't remember names of it, but it was like '95, and there was the wet foot, dry foot thing, and they were picking up Cubans coming out of Cuba heading to the United States, and they'd pack them in at Guantanamo Bay. Well, after a while, Guantanamo Bay got full, and they didn't want to bring them back to the States, so they flew them down to Panama, and they were over at Howard Air Force Base, and some of them started realizing that, hey, we're not going back. We're not going to the United States. We're going back to Cuba. You know, because we were filtering them through. You know, as they would clear out Guantanamo Bay, they'd send them up from Panama and then filter them out of Guantanamo Bay again, and then slowly train things out. That's when the Cubans decided to riot. Some of them escaped and whatnot, so they called an emergency deal, and I was the unit armorer. But I had, who I was working for was a little more tight-fisted with my time. Let's put it this way, because we were short of people too. So I, I handed stuff out, mainly axe handles. That was about it. And it was mostly to that intercept team story, and I'll tell it sometime in the future. And that was about it with that. I went in and we were guarding certain areas and whatnot, and I went back to work the next day. There's a lot of little stories like that, but what has to do with maintenance is that I had to make sure that everything was accounted for, and I had to make sure that everything was functioning, and that deal. And I was everywhere I went. I had vehicles. I had to make sure they were working. When I was in Turkey, we had electronic equipment. We had to make sure that met a certain schedule of repair, and that was key. It was the total, that was implementation, total preventive maintenance, TPM, and it didn't stop. It never stops. I need to talk about logistics at some point in the near future because that does get into it, but I'll figure that one out later. In the meantime, that was quick. Now that we've discussed the whole thing on total preventive maintenance, let me know what items you might want to hear about on my website, lean6leadership.com. Oh, like, share, subscribe, follow, comment, all of those things, please, please, please. We desperately need it to interact with the algorithm. And like I said, comments are welcome too. I do have access to some of the platforms, Spotify and Apple. And if you go to the website on Podbean, I get that directly. If you go to lean6leadership@gmail.com and email me directly, that will work too. So please like, comment, subscribe, follow, all that stuff. Thank you.